Hey there. Are you tired of waiting for the next episode of It's Probably Not Aliens? Well, we've got some good news for you. On Nebula, our streaming service, you can get access to all our episodes a week early. That's right, you'll never have to wait again to hear Scott and I debunk the latest ancient astronaut theory or get a movie fact wrong. But that's not all. Nebula is home to dozens of content creators we know you like, so you can find all your favorites in one place. Plus, we post content on there that you won't find anywhere else. And the best part? By signing up for Nebula at nebula.tv/probablyNotAliens, you're directly supporting the show and both of us. So don't wait any longer. Join Nebula today and listen to the next episode right after this one. I will say, to kind of give to the audience now, Angela, Dr. Collier, I'm going to show you a picture related to the episode that you've agreed to join me for, and I want to kind of get your raw, honest reaction to it and kind of a description for this audio medium of what it is you are looking at.
Oh, okay. Great. This is a big old Tesla coil in a warehouse. And you can see the plasma, and it looks like a man sitting and not looking at the plasma, reading quietly. Is that what this is? I would say I can hear this picture. These things are incredibly loud.
Oh, yeah.
I'm surprised he's just sitting there. Because like it's basically a lightning strike is what you're hearing. It's really loud. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, the trick is that you're surprised he's just sitting there. It's because he's not. That's actually a double exposure.
Oh, okay.
Because if he was in that room, he would be in an incredibly dangerous situation at that time.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong, but the way that it was described to me is that this would be like very. This is part of myth building. So this was actually taken in 1899 at Nikola Tesla's laboratory in Colorado Springs and was staged for what's called Century Magazine, or The Century, where they intentionally forced the machine to produce these inefficient arcs by turning it rapidly on and off during the photo shoot. And then did a double exposure where he sat in the room after they had turned everything off and then made this picture to build this mystique around him. So that then sitting in that seat is Nikola Tesla himself.
I love it. Okay, I've been fooled by image editing again. I don't know if it's like it is dangerous if you're not like I guess I don't know the distance he is from this and whether he's like inside some sort of cage or something to protect him, but I guess he doesn't look like it. Okay.
Well,
Okay.
I think you just perfectly exemplified why you're going to be great for this episode. Welcome to It's Probably Not Aliens, the podcast where we debunk pseudoscience, pseudohistory, pseudoarchaeology, or just conspiracy theories in the sci-fi genre. And Scott, my regular co-host, is currently having a little bit of a pat leave. So,
Aw.
yeah. And so I'm tapping former guests, friends, everybody that I could find that I wanted to bring back because we had just a great show with them. And I am very happy to bring back Angela Collier for a second episode.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So like last time I think we did an episode about the mystical Planet Nine and the little bit of the discovery of Pluto and all sorts of stuff in there. But today, we're going to talk about, this is kind of like part 2 in a 2-part where we talk about, as part of the episode we're covering, that there were like certain people in history that had done way too advanced science to not have either alien help or being part alien themselves. And last week we talked about Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, what was the verdict? Was he an alien or?
Jury's still out, but it turns out that he was less a singular genius than a product of a very unique set of socio-political and economic circumstances that produced a lot of genius people that he just happened to be the most famous of. But and speaking of which, Nikola Tesla. So this whole picture is to build a mythology around him, and he has. I think the first time I remember myths being brought up about Tesla, the first thing I remember is because you and I are both like now like mid millennials turning into like elder people. Do you
Yeah.
remember the oatmeal from like a million years ago, like the blog?
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah. With the like the gross cartoons. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like the first time I heard about Nikola Tesla was that whoever makes the oatmeal made a blog post about how great he was.
I feel like that there in the early 2000s there was like some like a revitalization of like Nikola Tesla as like this forgotten genius, and like we've robbed him of such respect, and so like he became a popular figure in like people who are interested in science, I guess, like just
Kind
the
of like from
public version.
the I fucking love science type period of the
Yeah,
social
yeah,
internet.
yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. Just like you wouldn't believe that there was a guy who actually did this. It was Nikola Tesla. Yeah.
precisely. And I mean, for what he did, the end of his life was actually quite sad. And so I'm gonna kind of I'm gonna start there. But he died on January 7th in 1943 in a the Hotel New Yorker in room 3327. He was 86 and died of coronary thrombosis, completely alone in his room. He couldn't afford his last year's rent, and the hotel had just been covering his expenses. And you mentioned that you knew about pigeons because his last passion of his life was feeding pigeons from his window. It's like a sweet old man thing to do.
Yeah.
And not too long before he died, one of his pigeons, like a pigeon that he was really attached to, died. And his quote was that I love that pigeon as much as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. When she died, something went out of my life. I knew my life's work was finished.
Oh my goodness.
This is
Okay.
this is the man who, depending upon who you asked, basically invented modern electricity. So fast forward to today. Now, when you think of Tesla, you think of Tesla Motors or Tesla Incorporated, the electric car company, which currently has a market cap of $1.4 trillion, a number that is insane.
Is that real though? Haven't Okay,
It's
this
as
is
real as any market
unrelated.
cap is. Like it's
Okay.
as any like I feel like right now, like I don't know, no market cap or stock price thing makes any sense right now. So as
Okay.
much as it, but it's still an insane number. But Tesla Motors, founded in 2003 by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpening. But we all know it because in 2004, rich boy Elon Musk bought it as an investor, and then has been doing a similar form of myth making, trying to claim that he has, trying to insinuate that he has done all of these like scientific things when he has precisely one name on a patent that has more than a dozen inventors on it. It had something to do with like Windows or something.
It is hilarious to me to purchase a company that like is fully formed and then be like, I made this company. But that's what they do, right? They must believe it. They must believe that because they bought it with dollars, that it counts as an invention.
That's capitalism basically, right? So I remember reading a whole article about how he like reinvented rockets with SpaceX, and I was like,
Oh my God.
it started from first principles, and it was like, I
I
mean,
need to say that I have an astronomy-ish background,
mhm.
and 15 years ago, all of the astronomers knew that Elon Musk was a dumbass. 15 years ago, and like we had to sit there and watch him be in like Iron Man, as if he was the real version of Iron Man, and no one would listen to us. But look at us now. We were right. We were
Yeah,
we were Cassandras screaming about how he is the dumbest person in every meeting, and no one would listen. But now we're here, so
yeah. Some people could say that he helped build a rocket through first principles. Other would say that he wasted a crap load of money and resources to make even a moderately functional SpaceX rocket. And now with some severe design flaws in the current Falcon Heavy is going to cause NASA to be set back by like 30 years while China like runs laps around it. So, hey, you're going to the moon like next
no,
month,
no,
right?
no. It's
You're going
it's
around the
it's
moon.
Mars. Oh, is that real? See, I don't keep up with what NASA is doing. I thought we were talking about how Elon
Oh, he
Musk has
wants to go
been
to Mars.
saying he's definitely going to Mars. Like 10 years ago, he's like 10 years from now, we're going to Mars. And he recently downgraded it to be like, no, no, no. The moon is much better. It's who would even go to Mars? It like makes more sense to go to the moon. And
Yeah,
it's a rough one out there.
yeah, yeah. That's That's tough. Artemis, so yeah, we're recording this in February, but I think like not next week, but the week after, Artemis 2 is happening. And that's supposed to be like basically like the kind of Apollo 10 version of our like re-landing on the moon. So it's supposed to be like the kind of like slingshot around the moon to like prove that you can do it. The only reason I know a whole lot about it is because one of the people on the crew is Canadian. And if you're Canadian and you live in Canada, when something like that happens, it becomes the most important thing that's ever happened. So everyone's going to talk about the one Canadian on the crew that is going not to the moon, but close to it. So that's where we're at. But yeah, like there's something very wrong about like this company anyways, appropriated Tesla's name 60 years after he had died. So I'm just like, there's like a story here about like, how does someone who revolutionized electrical engineering die alone and broke, but then his name becomes the name of a company that's worth more than the GDP of several, if not most countries? And then why does a billionaire, or shall I say now, I guess, trillionaire, get to cosplay as a genius while using the name of a dead man who died in poverty? The answer might surprise you, which is capitalism. But yeah, so that's sort of the thing we're talking about today. We're talking about Nikola Tesla, but where do the aliens come in is then the question. And I'm going to try my absolute best to give the most steel man version of the ancient astronaut claim. It might break our brains, but I'm going to try my best. This is their claim to as accurate as I could get it and as strong an argument as I could make. So the core claim that they've made in the episode that we're kind of digging through is that, is it possible, this is a quote from the show, is it possible that Nikola Tesla's scientific achievements could have been influenced by alien intelligence? Do we know? Tesla claimed in 1934 that he had developed a particle beam weapon that could annihilate, quote, 100,000 soldiers at once, and that it could melt an aircraft engine from 250 miles away with something he called teleforce, but the press called it a death ray.
Death ray is a great punch up.
Yeah. Teleforce, he needed you'll learn in many ways that he needed a branding manager really badly. And then when Tesla died in 1943, it was the middle of World War II. And within 2 days, FBI agents showed up at his hotel room and seized all of his papers and possessions under a group or an organization within the government called the Office of Alien Property Custodian, wartime agency. So you can imagine where Ancient Aliens is going with this. And all of his stuff, everything that he wrote, like all of his journals, all of his stuff went into government custody. And so documentation, though, of his like according to Ancient Aliens, that documentation shows that the death ray was in development then at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1943. And that 4 years later, that was the same air base where the Roswell flying saucer was allegedly taken. It all is like, is this like some kind of like Warehouse 13 super... Sure. It's their sci-fi base.
Do you have more information on the what it means when you say the death ray was in like development? Because I'm confused how you would power a death ray that could do that. That's like not physical.
That's what it's part of Ancient Aliens' claim. I don't know. I didn't see any sources. They were surprisingly silent. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit about why a death ray just could not happen or would be very tough to do. But the broader pattern is that Tesla is lumped in with people like Albert Einstein, J. Robert Oppenheimer, and Wernher von Braun. What a club to be part of. But that individuals who demonstrated knowledge that was dramatically ahead of their era, and that human technological development shows these weird discontinuous leaps. So that to them is a sign that these individuals may have been conduits for extraterrestrial knowledge, and that Tesla was part of a broader pattern of alien intervention that streaks all the way back to ancient Sumer. So
I would love to plug my own video. Am I allowed to do that?
Of course.
I have a video. I have a video about the Einstein's like big miracle year. How he seemingly out of nowhere was like, "Oh my gosh, I understand relativity." And the point of that video is I'm highlighting there's like 4 different groups in America, all spread out in Europe, that were like on his heels doing the exact same thing. And kind of the plot of the video was like, Einstein gets all this credit. Einstein is definitely 100% a genius, of course. But also, if Einstein never existed, we would have had the miracle year in like 1907 instead of 1905. Because like you're just, the standalone genius as an idea is just nonsensical. Like, I guess I don't want to spoil what Tesla does, but if he hadn't have done it, I imagine we wouldn't have been too far behind in the development of like electricity and electrical components and things.
100%. You have 100% nailed the thesis of this episode right away.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So you got it. No, because we established this also last week, because that's also very much what was going on with Leonardo da Vinci and stuff too. That like none of these, like the lone genius doesn't exist, or if so, they're very, very rare, and that these people are usually products of a really productive like system where like it seems like to me, I don't. Maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, but in science, it would seem that science will go through periods where things develop incrementally, but then like maybe like a new, like some kind of new theoretical breakthrough happens, or like a new sort of sensor technology or something, like a new way to do new types of experiments kind of comes up, or a new concept is explored. And then there's like a gold rush as like everybody kind of explores this new thing. And it does it leads to a whole bunch of new stuff at a long time as that new.
I would say you nailed it. Yeah, absolutely. I think people attach genius to scientists, but it's much more of a creative field. So when like if you do develop like, oh, we have a sensor that can suddenly do like 10 to the minus 4 instead of 10 to the minus 2, it's like a gold rush of people who are like, I have a new idea for this application. And so you get this big boom of papers because of like this one little thing. And then in the future, everyone wants to attribute all of that information to like the guy who made that incremental switch to making a slightly better sensor or something.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Luckily, my background in technology history is helping out here. So that's the claim. So like that's their case. And on the surface, maybe if you like really piece it together, there's like a bit of compellingness to it. It's at least an interesting story. But I want to kind of go through each of those claims one by one and kind of explain what they are, explain what's going on with them, and then maybe we can get some more, take them down to earth. So first, let's talk about that death ray. So Tesla describes that he invented something called a particle beam weapon of unprecedented power. It would have a 4-part system that, one, neutralized air resistance, included a high voltage generator, an amplification to 50 million volts, and something called an electrostatic projector. What those are, I do not know, but he could use it to apparently project a microscopic metal particle at near light speed. That was his claim.
What does he mean by project? Like,
if I were to hazard a guess, that it would be kind of like what would be in science fiction terms now, like a Gauss rifle.
I don't know what that is.
Like a rifle that uses magnets instead of chemicals to propel things.
Oh, okay. So he's heaving an object near the speed of light. Okay. Like basically propelling it forward.
Yeah, basically trying to say that he made like, the CERN particle accelerator, but like something that you could actually use as a weapon. Yeah, because I remember seeing things like with the powers involved, it's like if you stuck your hand in the Hadron Collider, what would happen? And the answer is like probably nothing.
There's a guy who stuck his head in a particle accelerator once, and he lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, because I
had a hole in his head.
with my like limited idea of physics, I was like, if you stuck your head in the particle collider and the particle went through it, the most likely thing would have happened is that particle wouldn't have interacted with a single atom in your head. It would have just gone right through it.
Or you'll get radiated and you'll get cancer like 70 years later.
Yeah, it's like that's the closest thing I could think of. But this would be a defensive perimeter weapon that could be mounted on fixed emplacements along borders. And when he came out with this, the New York Times wrote a headline on July 1934 that said, "Tesla at 78 bears new death beam," in a very New York news headline, 1934. So after Tesla's death, the government officials did panic because and this just happens like with all governments and stuff like that. Like, what if he actually did build something? Like, what if he didn't actually make a working death ray, but he made the components of something that could be useful? And specifically, what if the Nazis got the designs that he had? So they went into his hotel, grabbed all of his stuff, including his vault, which supposedly had a $10,000 prototype. And there was a rumor that it would explode if it was opened incorrectly. So
$10,000 in 1943 money?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Let me see. Let's see if I can find
that's
inflation calculator.
Tens of millions. That's my guess.
Oh,
no, it can't be that much.
Accidentally opened up Canada's. Okay. This would be 1943, 10,000. In January 2026, that would be roughly $188,000.
Oh, I was so far away. Okay. I don't know anything about economics. That's still fair. A lot of money, though.
Yeah,
Especially for a man who wasn't paying his hotel bill.
yeah. So they anticipated that he seemed to have a lot more going on than he actually did. And then we found out what was actually inside the vault, which is something called a Wheatstone bridge, which is, I guess, some kind of basic electrical measuring device that you could order from a catalog. It was basically junk. It was like mundane. It was like electrical testing equipment. Like the only thing I could think of is like, it sounds to me, like my dad did some electrician stuff, that it sounds like basically like the 1940s version of like a multimeter.
Huh.
So that's like the gap between the sort of myth and reality of what he was doing in like one little object. Now, here's another fun connection to everything going on. Then they took all of these notes and they gave them to an MIT physicist by the name of John G. Trump. And the answer is yes relation.
I know of this.
Yeah, so this is the current US dictator's uncle, who it's just so we're going to be saying the word Trump a lot, and we're not referring to America's dear leader, but we're talking about this John G. Trump MIT physicist. I don't know too much about him at all, of his personality, so I can't really bring into that. But Trump was an expert in high voltage physics and was already working on things like weapons research, specifically with like radar to do for World War II. And so he was, the most qualified person that they could get to evaluate what he had. And Trump's conclusion was finished within about 3 weeks, where he concluded that the death ray was speculative, philosophical, and promotional, and that it contained, quote, no sound workable principles and would not be militarily useful or dangerous in enemy hands. With Angela here, I got to be very, very careful because, like, you're almost gonna have to check my homework here. So this is why it wouldn't work. A real particle beam weapon faces several fundamental physics issues. Charged particles have a thing where when they hit air molecules, they immediately scatter. So that when you fire an energy beam, it spreads out, loses all of its energy, and deposits the power into the atmosphere instead of the target. So even today, modern high-level lasers with like megawatts of electricity sources still have extreme range limitations, beam spread, atmospheric absorption, and they cannot maintain focus over distance. All of the attempts to use like lasers as weapons are either at very, very short range, are more designed to confuse sensors than do damage, or they are in space where a lot of these problems are less of a problem.
That sounds so good. Perfect. I guess my like right away you say death ray, and I'm just like, there's no way you could power it. Like to power something that could kill a human like immediately. Like he's talking about like evaporating, like a laser so powerful. Like insane.
Yeah.
Like the amount of power required to do that, and like it would have to be so close range, like you were saying. It's what it is. I don't know. I think it's a testament to a science communication and education that like I feel like a newspaper editor before they publish Death Ray would like look into that. I guess I haven't read the article from the 30s or the 40s about it, but I mean it sounds nonsensical, which is why I'm not surprised John Trump only took a couple weeks to be like, yeah, there's nothing in here.
Yeah. And this is the part where it's also like, is it a laser? Because I don't think the laser had been invented by this point. But and he talked about it more as like what I would call in like sci-fi as either like a Gauss rifle or what's called a railgun, of just basically magnetically accelerating or electromagnetically accelerating a small particle to a very high speed. But either then, like also high energy particle accelerators have also not been invented by the 1930s or it's because that's one of those examples of like when those were invented, then a whole bunch of new physics got happened, and that's why everyone is trying to fight to build like the even bigger and bigger ones, or at least they did. There's a really great Bobby Broccoli video about it, about how all the countries were fighting to build massive particle accelerators at one point.
Yeah, they're not as into that anymore.
No, science less of a thing these days, unfortunately. But yeah, but when it comes to like lasers, like I know that the US military is now doing, like they're installing these like laser things on boats, but I have been pretty much under the idea that they're for drones, and I think their warfare is turning into a weird thing because like the war in Ukraine is showing that drones are like so ubiquitous in the conflicts, and the big thing about them is to take them down before they can do damage. Uses a lot of like ammunition and stuff, and so they have to think of a way to counter that.
I don't know anything about warfare. What are they doing? Like the drones are like to get like they're just taking video footage of like what?
No,
or are the drones a weapon?
It's more insane because of how like how high and low tech. So and how this like shows what the future of warfare will look like. They will take like a drone that like you could buy like at Best Buy, and that like to do like a video. Then they will like strap a grenade to it. And
Oh my God.
just to not have like signal jamming or anything like that, they will communicate with it via a fiber optic cable and then just send the drone to like go blow up somewhere. And there's like these things in Ukraine where you're seeing like fields that are like just covered, like almost like cities covered in fiber optic cable that look like almost like spider web is covering everything. It's going to be like, it's this really horrific, weird state of things. You can tell though
That's
that
shocking and depressing. I don't like it. Okay.
But one of the things it does is it kind of like it gets around a lot of weapon systems that are a lot more expensive, and so now they're trying to figure out stuff with lasers about how do you counter this kind of thing. I have heard of lasers used in space because vacuums. A laser can travel further in a vacuum before it becomes an issue. So I know that people have talked about using lasers for propulsion at one point, but I think that's like a whole like consistent but low momentum or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
I
getting off
guess,
that.
yeah. Yeah. I don't think the death rate was viable in the
No.
40s, but also not now. I feel like probably not. I don't know though. I don't know anything. And it's fine. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. No, that's where it is. But the thing is that it does seem like military industrial complex people keep wanting to return to it because despite this assessment, during the Cold War, they sort of revived this fantasy. There was something in DARPA called Operation Seesaw, which in the late 50s and 60s tried to make particle beams actually work, but was abandoned due to it having, quote, formidable technical problems associated with propagating a beam through very long distances in the atmosphere, which is
Oh.
more or less exactly what I said.
Yeah.
And then most famous.
Just like you get $2 million from DARPA to be like, oh, I know what your issue is. And then you just write up the same report that anyone could have written. Like, the issue is there's stuff in the air. That's fun. Okay.
Yeah, when stuff like this happens and people talk about it in conspiratorial ways in the United States about like how they have all these like, you know, big technologies that they're hiding. The men who stare at goats should probably give you like a little bit of like show what's going on here. Like the US military is so overfunded that they are greenlighting like the most blue sky insane stuff they could think of to, especially during the Cold War when they thought that they could use as an edge on the Soviets. Like they funded ESP and psychic powers because they didn't know if it worked or not, but they wanted to beat the Soviets at it. They would fund like insane, like even now I think DARPA said that they're funding Alcubierre microbubbles. Investigate how to. So are you familiar with Miguel Alcubierre, the physicist, the Mexican physicist?
Mm-mm.
He's most responsible for trying to make the most physically possible FTL system that you can possibly think of. They did the math. They apparently mathed around the negative energy. You just need like absolutely massive amounts of positive energy to create basically like almost like a riptide or like a wave, like a ripple in space-time to like kind of skirt around relativistic physics to be able to do stuff. He's not like a crank either. He's like a physics professor at like UNAM.
I gotta say, like the words you're saying and not a crank don't.
It's got to be my issue. His only interest was in figuring out whether it was mathematically possible. But he's
okay.
He was he's still I think a professor at UNAM, which is like the biggest university in Mexico.
Dude, Central and South America have some really, really good physics. So like I believe you. It's the type of thing that gets like popularized and misinterpreted by like what it is. So I'm just like I don't know.
Alcubierre's like thing was like I found a mathematical way that if negative energy exists, you could do faster than light travel. And then later on they were like, well, you don't need negative energy, but like you still would need an amount of energy that is absurd. That's kind of the place they were at, like, and you'd have to be able to figure out how to use energy to manipulate gravity, which is also complicated.
Just that. Yeah.
Just like someone was talking about time travel in an episode we did a while back where it's like, as long as you can do one impossible thing, time travel becomes possible. Like that kind of stuff. Or if you could harness like at one point the Alcubierre theory was like to accelerate something past light speed, you would need just an amount of negative energy that would be equivalent to like the mass of Jupiter or something like that.
Oh, okay. No, see, this is the thing. I wouldn't call myself a science communicator, but I do talk about science a lot. And there are these very famous things that are famous with people who like an aspect of science And they will say stuff like what you're just saying to me, and they're like, "You don't know of this guy, the most famous guy in physics," and I'm like, "No, that's not what physics." I mean, I believe I believe he's a real guy. I believe he's doing real stuff, but like the way it gets twisted and spun, it's very similar to Nikola Tesla being like this supermassive genius, where it's like, well, that's not really. I don't know.
That's fair. No. I again, my only knowledge of physics comes from the outside, so I'm always trying to be more modest in my approach to it because it's an extremely difficult
I can
subject.
see why alien people would like his stuff, though.
I don't know if they actually get into his stuff because his stuff is more about trying to make things like plausible, but this is not. This is outside of this. This is like completely outside of ancient alien stuff. They just assume that you can just do it. I don't think they have any. They have to them relativity is just nothing apparently. So I once said to them, because one of the things I said is like, one of the reasons you know that aliens haven't traveled here is because they would need to go at speeds that when they break would cause like the equivalent of like several hundred nuclear bombs going off like all over the place. So but the other one that would be an example of like trying to use lasers to do stuff was the famous Star Wars initiative or the Strategic Defense Initiative of the 1980s.
It's a Reagan joint, right?
Yeah, where they blew $5.7 billion, which was greater than the combined budget for NASA and the NSF at that time, trying to make a particle beam weapon that would basically be something equivalent to what today would be like Israel's Iron Dome, like missile interception, like using a laser to blast a Soviet nuke or something like that. But they failed because it turns out that money also can't beat physics. So they weren't able to make it work. And so if they can't do it today with like modern technology, the 1930s Tesla probably would have also not been able to do it. There's a lot of physics that happened between the 1930s and now, and even so. But here's the thing, though, is that story is actually more tragic than just like a debunking, because his real achievements, the real things that Tesla contributed to the world are actually genuinely revolutionary things. I'll just kind of give like some that genuinely changed our civilization, like the rotating magnetic field and the AC induction motor are his contributions. The AC motor apparently eliminated something called a commutator, which was a huge breakthrough in the field of electrical engineering and enabled what is called polyphase AC power systems. This made possible long-distance power transmission, centralized power grids, big like power stations, electrified factories and homes, and like is like the key to like a lot of our modern electrical industrial world. So it's like but again, there were other people in the same area working on the same thing, but it's still like the contributions of his work did make a big impact on the world.
I would say like, I don't know, there's this whole thing of people saying that Tesla didn't get like enough credit. But I would say in physics, he has a unit.
Yeah, we literally measure the power of magnets after him. Yeah.
Like I would say in physics, people are aware and like appreciate his contributions, which are really important. Yeah,
I get that. Yeah. So I want to kind of investigate also the second bit where I talked about how the government seized all of his papers to hide his technology. So the claim was that the FBI took it all, they classified it, they kept it in secret for decades. Some of the materials were never returned. So maybe they found something that the public wasn't supposed to know. Fascinating. So let's kind of break down where that goes. So here's what happened. On January 9th, 1943, so 2 days after he died, representatives from the Office of Alien Property Custodians, went into his room, seized all of his papers and possessions. All of this stuff is not disputed. That's all confirmed, documented stuff. It's like the example of the kinds of kernels of truth that conspiracies tend to grow from. But the Office of Alien Property Custodian was not a black ops unit or anything like that. It was a standard wartime agency. Its job was to manage the property of enemy nationals during World War II. So they did thousands of cases where they seized businesses, patents, copyrights, and anything that was linked to the Axis powers during the war. And this included over 50,000 patents and copyrights. So it was like a filing system for that kind of material from Axis powers.
God, Tesla was like Austrian, right? But he moved and became American, right? He was an American for like 40 years by the time World War II happened, right? Is that right?
He's from Croatia, but close enough. But but he did live in the United States. But like, I guess they were worried that, I think that like maybe they were worried that like spies or like if that his stuff was because if they had followed his like will and stuff like that, that stuff would have gone back to his family in Belgrade, which
Oh,
would
I
have
see.
maybe fallen. I think at that time Croatia was occupied by the Nazis, so
Okay.
it was either that it was occupied or that Croatia just joined the Axis. It was, I know that it did one of those two. It was under Nazi control anyway. But basically, like this office was a filing system. It wasn't like a sort of like Warehouse 13 type thing. And again, yeah, even though he was a citizen at death, alien was legal terminology for any foreign origin property. So what? And also they were just paranoid, because what if his papers actually did have military secrets? What if it did have something?
Hmm.
And you didn't want to like accidentally hand over something to the Nazis, or potentially Nazi spies might have already had copies of it, so they would want to make sure that there was nothing there that they would need to know about. It's a pretty safe kind of bureaucratic logic thinking of just wanting to cover your things, classifying instead of risking something leaking that you didn't anticipate. And yeah, again, as we mentioned, John Trump's assessment was very brief, very dismissive. It wasn't secretive. It didn't. After he wrote his report, it was basically done with. So a very standard procedure. And that his report basically said there's nothing here. And then that's kind of the story that like Ancient Aliens stops at, but his papers still had like most of his life taken care of, like had happened. Like in 1952, his papers were returned to Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovic, in Serbia or Yugoslavia at the time. So they did return his papers. Approximately 80 trunks were seized, but about 60 trunks, which just shows like how much like papers back then. Like, oh my God, moving papers was like a whole industry back then. Of the 80 trunks of papers seized, approximately 60 went back. And there was a gap, but none of the gap had, and there's no evidence that any of that was technical content. And if you were to like look into it, it was most likely either duplicates or just mundane letters, or just like lost somewhere in like moving stuff around, because we like just lost a lot of information just because things got misfiled or something like that back then. And some stuff was kept classified until 2016, where somebody through the Freedom of Information Act actually asked for the FBI files, and they gave all of them. There was 250 pages that they released, and there was literally like nothing in them. Mostly like internal memos, correspondence, evaluations of his work, including like basically like those not so nice evaluations of his death ray and wireless power ideas.
Yeah.
And showed that like the officials concluded that his late life proposals were speculative and had no new practical usage. So that was basically everything. If the conspiracy were real, this is where it would crack open, and it didn't. That was like the last things that were kept. They were probably kept classified just to be polite to Tesla and his contributions, which I wouldn't say that the government should do, but is not unexpected of
I
them.
gotta say, it just sounds like an old sad man's like mental illness. Like this is something that happens like with age and with physicists, where I don't know, you lose like a bit of your mental faculty, because like he was in his 80s, right? And so you stop being able to understand like the reality of your ideas anymore. And so you kind of verge on crackpot. And so it does make me kind of sad to imagine this like brilliant physicist at 80 living alone, surrounded by pigeons and boxes of papers. Like that's so sad.
His story is very sad, especially with like all the work he did do. And yeah, so like the later programs that I talked about, like the Cold War beam weapon project, Project Seesaw, again, when they were asked, they had no knowledge of any of Tesla's papers. So Tesla's lineage was not in any of these programs. These were separate attempts to do the same thing. They were just chasing the same fantasy and failing for the exact same reasons. And yeah, the real classification in the 40s was just because in the 40s, but also today, this happens a lot in the US, is that things will just get stamped secret just to like in a kind of just in case way. Like they'll default make things classified so that they don't accidentally let something out. And declassifying is much harder than classifying. Back then too, like there's been some changes to the rules on how America classifies things. So now there's an automatic 25-year expiration on classified materials. That wasn't true back in the 40s. So some of these things would just stay classified forever by default, because that was just how it worked at the time. And also there were no FOIA requests back then, and they didn't do periodic reviews of classified material back then. So it's just like a blanket lockbox that they would do. And then it would get into this big bureaucracy with no sunset dates are not much sunset dates. So it speaks more to like how the government has a really weird relationship with secrets. And then, so the government spent a lot of time investigating implausible weapons during the war because everybody was looking for some kind of technical edge on each other. Probably the most famous example would be the atomic bomb.
Sure.
Because that was, and again, it shows like where the information thing was, because it was spring loaded by knowledge that the Germans had an Atomwaffen program, but then once they actually won the war, they realized that the Germans had abandoned that like almost immediately.
I have got to tell you that the timeline of Tesla crossing with like nuclear physics is bonkers for me in my brain, because like I guess I would associate him with early 1900s, and then he kind of stopped working in like 1920. So like we stopped, well, I guess he didn't stop working. He stopped producing work that the physics community would be interested in. So it's like shocking to me to hear that Tesla was like 2 years out from seeing an atomic bomb. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it just shows how wild that period of history was when it came to technological development.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, like, it's important to mention that he was an engineer, not a physicist. So he wasn't like doing new theoretical ground. He was like applying things or trying out stuff. Or I think some of the things he did, like he found something that worked, and then the physics like was kind of described it later, which happens occasionally.
That's interesting. The demarcation line between like engineer and applied physics is I don't know.
It's like what kind of solutions you're trying to solve at the time or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the pattern, that we have a mix of overcaution, a weird secrets culture, and then also the fact that the US just funded any idea they could think of during the Cold War. And we get this sort of story here.
I see. So the evidence for Nikola Tesla having a death ray is like the Star Wars program of Ronald Reagan, even though in real life unassociated and unaffiliated. I get it.
Yeah, and that and it just has to do with the fact that the government seized the papers that had that, and again found it wanting. So, and on top of that, like it also like I want to kind of show some like appreciation, because like there's something very fascinating, like as we kind of mentioned, the fact that like in the 20th century, the collective labor of all the people who built the electrical grid and the amount of infrastructure and like the engineers and stuff that electrified everything based on these like ideas is pretty. I mean, they built it all, and the US is still largely relying on it to this day. And part of the reason that they do is, well, because of budget cuts. But the fact is that it's been able to hold out despite the fact that, like, if you think about how much electricity was consumed when they built the electrical grid, that still is in some ways the way it is today. You can imagine like they built it to be a lot more, to be able to handle a lot more than they actually were guessing. So pretty good construction, I guess, overall, if the fact that they can do that. You just like, because back then I think electricity in most houses was just like lights.
Yeah, that's a really interesting, like, quick adoption of a new physics idea or engineering. Sorry. Like, it's really interesting how completely willing people were all of a sudden to be like, all right, electricity in our home. It's interesting. I don't know. Like, you can equate, if we're doing conspiracy theories, like the adoption of electricity with like 5G, and how all these conspiracy theories developed around like, what is this doing to our brains? And it's like nothing. And I am sure if you go back and look at the logs, there's like a group of Luddites, I guess, who were against electricity being in your home, like
That would make
forming a
sense.
little conspiracy theory group of like, we don't know what this is doing to us. I don't know.
Yeah, no, yes, and on that too. Like, and given what it was replacing, which was like gas lights, which was probably like causing a lot of carbon monoxide poisoning and stuff like that as well, like, and fires. So
Yeah.
yeah, like not only are they rejecting the new thing, but also the thing that they want to replace is like way more dangerous. That's like the people who take bleach because they don't want to get a vaccine or something like that, or the horse dewormer or whatever.
Yeah.
But so the next bit to talk about is the Wright-Patterson base, the Roswell base or whatever. So papers were sent to that Air Force base, and 4 years later, Roswell debris was allegedly also sent there, and so that's their like connection. But the thing is that during World War II, Wright-Patterson was the place where the military sent everything that was remotely related to technology or technical stuff for evaluation. So it was just like their kind of like, I don't know, like it was their big workshop basically. So it was like a big clearinghouse. They also sent like Nazi rocket designs were sent there. Anytime they captured like Japanese equipment, they would send there. That's where they worked on experimental radar systems, and any scientists' papers that would have been relevant would have been sent there. So it was just like a place where they fought. It's the closest thing to a real Warehouse 13, but it was just any technology that they wanted to take and tear apart and poke at and figure out what happened. Yeah. And then when we get into like SDI, again, there's no document of like the lineage there. And what they found with SDI or Star Wars was that the same issues of scattering of particles with the air became a problem. It shows that like speculative breakthrough weapons, mostly ones that fail, and that's not unique to Tesla or UFOs. Throughout the Cold War, the US tried death rays multiple times. They tried like lasers and particle accelerator beams or whatever multiple times, and none of it ever worked. The US apparently once tried to make an earthquake machine. Psychic warfare was, there was something called Project Stargate that was an attempt to use psychic powers or figure out if psychic powers can be used against the Soviets. And anti-gravity was also briefly researched as an attempt to like, just to show like the kinds of things that the state does actually fund.
Yeah.
So, and they're mostly quietly abandoned once the physics and engineering and costs don't cooperate with each other, because they'll put out those moonshots. They always want their next nuclear bomb, I guess. So they're always like trying to think about like they'll fund all these like kind of blue sky projects, even if it's just for a little bit.
The term blue sky in this context is so interesting to me that you keep using it. Because like, isn't that like for Disney parks where they're like blue sky ideas, whatever ride you want. And here we're talking about devastating nuclear war.
Yeah, it's true. Is there like I'm trying to think of like another term for it, because like skunk works almost works, but not really. And
it works. It's just upsetting.
Yeah. I'm sure what the name of Google's version of it was, but I know Google's got that big idea lab that is very secretive. I can't remember what its name is. It's been a bit, but yeah, like the whole thing though, and this is like the important part, and I know this like is kind of horrifying because it's war, but like that there were actually some genuine breakthroughs that came out through these like weird programs. Like these kind of things also resulted in the development of radar, and it'd be tough to downplay how big of a deal radar has done. Proximity fuses, which this is also the place where computing was first like really funded. They developed a lot of it for like ballistics calculations and code breaking, but a lot of early computing was like funded in this period. But it didn't come from like weird like alien stuff like that. It came from like engineers and experiments, and the probably like three most powerful words in science: peer review and collaboration, and just building on prior research. But the thing is that with these like crazy things and all this place, like it's one of the things to show about science is like innovation is messy, it's collaborative, and oftentimes incremental. And lone geniuses with cosmic downloads are not typically part of the process.
Yeah, I think that's the thing to take away. Like, if Tesla had never existed, we would still have a power grid, and someone else would have done it. But like, it's perfectly appropriate to like give him his flowers. Although it does feel kind of mean to take the end of his life where he's like obviously going through it and attach conspiracy theories to it. Like,
yeah,
that's kind of devastating.
It is. I felt very bad for Tesla by the end of this. But yeah, like, because like in technology history, one of the things that we covered was like, because they're like, oh, was Tesla too far ahead of his time? And the thing is that we do have a few cases where people are too far ahead of their time. And the problem is that because science and technology develops incrementally, oftentimes those people don't get recognized because the thing that they make has no use to anybody. Like if you think about like the ancient Greek who figured out steam pressure can move machines in like the classical age, but like nobody knew, like there was no infrastructure to actually make anything of that in like 300 BC or whatever. So there's no like it didn't go anywhere. Or like like indigenous Mexicans invented the wheel, but there weren't roads to put them on, so they just kind of relegated it to like children's toys because they didn't see the immediate use of it, or there weren't like the kinds of roads that you would need to make wheels function. So that kind of stuff, becomes a problem. But then the claim that they have is that, he must have had help because he was too far ahead of his time. His achievements are inexplicable. Tesla's genius appears to transcend human capability, and there's these discontinuous leaps in progress. But if you look at it, as we've been dancing around, and as you've mentioned, that the big thing that he did contribute was the AC motor and rotating magnetic field. But rotating magnetic fields were already being explored by other people. Like, for example, an Italian physicist named Galileo Ferraris published a piece on rotating magnetic fields in 1885. And there was a British engineer named William Bailey who was also investigating this. So one of the things, his contributions are less like new things that nobody was exploring, but it's that he eliminated something called the commutator, which made rotating magnetic fields commercially viable. And that's the key, right? Is that it's not like mythology. He just figured out one important breakthrough that then made everything else kind of fall into place.
I would also, like, if you just want to talk about capitalism, like, he was very specifically working with people who were pushing to product versus like a lot of researchers who are like, oh, I'm in a university and I'm just learning about like magnetic fields and their structure and how they behave. And like, he's working at a lab that is like, we are going to sell this. You need to make it so we can produce it and mass produce it and sell it, which, like, it doesn't make it more your idea, but it means you're going to get more credit for it because it's the one that's going to appear in people's homes and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And oftentimes Tesla's like rivalry with Thomas Edison is brought up as like the big injustice or whatnot. Like, I don't know because Thomas Edison's concept of electrification was all based on direct current power.
Yeah, I'm aware. I don't know how much truth there is to like their rivalry. Like, I know of that. Okay, maybe I don't know if this is true, but because Edison had more clout, he pushed DC, and the world would be a little bit different if instead we had AC power everywhere. But we don't because of Thomas Edison. Is that the story?
Kind of, yeah. He tried to push it. It didn't work because at the end of the day, Edison cared about what made money instead of like what. Like, he hit the point of pride, but like also because AC power lets you move electricity over longer periods without losing charge and stuff like that. That's what like really made it work. But the whole thing is that Edison, who maybe wasn't as much of like a big breakout kind of person, he did have a different kind of intelligence to him, which was that the reason why he's credited with so many things is because he worked backwards from the market. He would look for like bottlenecks and pain points where he could make something profitable, and then filed thousands of patents for like every incremental improvement, and then sued anybody who came near his work. And I think that a lot of his like insistence on DC power was kind of in that environment.
Sounds like that guy sucks, though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he did kind of suck. Tesla, though, had an opposite approach. He would try to work on enormous world-shaking projects, and then would try to file these huge, expansive permits or patents, and then they would always fail in court. And this is why he ended up pretty much broke, is that he didn't really have like a marketing strategy for the things that he was doing. His patents were too broad to defend in court. And so if Tesla had been like Edison, incremental, litigious, and methodical, he probably would have been really, really rich. But I talked to my former PhD supervisor, Rob McDougall, who has been on the show before, that we wouldn't love him like we do today, though, if he had been like that. But again, he's like the product of cumulative innovations. Another big contribution that Tesla made was early radio and wireless communications. But again, he was doing so at the same time that Oliver Lodge was, that John Ambrose Fleming was, that Guglielmo Marconi were. That's less popular names, but courts later treated Tesla as one contributor among many. Like, he couldn't hold the patent or anything like that. He wasn't the sole inventor. It was a big thing. And also just patent law and engineering, and this engineering realities in this period are so strange. Trying to figure out who owns what, because part of that involves who gets paid for making them. Mm-hmm. Another probably big one would be Niagara Falls, like the Niagara Falls, I think the power plant. So
there's a power plant in Niagara Falls.
Yeah, what's it called?
Is it like a water powered like thing?
Yeah, hydroelectric power at Niagara Falls. It's so huge that here where I live, our word, like in Canada, or at least in Ontario, the word we use for power bills and stuff like that is your hydro bill, because it's like such a huge percentage of the power of Ontario. Like, Ontario is fueled by that, and like the CANDU nuclear reactor. Like, that's our power grid.
Okay. That's making it's like, when you learn something that you feel like you should have known. I did know that you called it hydro. I didn't know why.
That's no, I
Okay.
mean, like that's like a piece of Canadian trivia. It's just fine. I'm never going to shame anybody for anything like that. But yeah, like commemorative plaques do list 9 of Tesla's patents amongst the many people who invented the stuff there. And his system was integrated with the work of lots of different engineers. He's just the most, oddly enough, he's the most famous of them for the person who is like apparently woefully uncredited for all of his contributions.
Yeah, I'm starting to push back on that a little bit in my brain because like people are like Tesla was never credited and it's like you're telling me when he was in his 70s he was on the cover of Time magazine? Like what are we talking about here? Like his inventions, the death ray was getting like front page news. Like I feel like this is a myth that he wasn't appreciated, right? It
It's a
or
little
maybe
bit
he was forgotten in the 80s or something.
A little bit, and just also the fact that he died with no money, I think, is the part that people bring up. But yeah, there's like this pattern. Like he was one of many like people who were all developing all these things at the time, and he just happened to have a few that he did before other people. Like there's no such. It's just put out there. There's no such thing as an isolated genius.
Right.
Because, and I think this is like the hard thing for like a lot of people who don't work in like science and engineering and stuff to realize is that science is work. Like it is just like it's just working day in and day out. It's so like it's not like inspiration. It's not like some kind of like eureka type thing. It's really just a process that you're just always doing.
I would love to blame scientists for this though, because I do feel, God, this is so inside baseball, but I have this pet peeve. I know of a lot of scientists and like I've met a lot of them. Like I go to conferences and I watch their talks and they're normal people. And then you will read like a journalist has interviewed them and they will tell some story about how like I was jogging up a hill in LA and I saw the sun reflect on a water bottle and inspiration struck and it's like you are bullshitting me right now. No. Like like the way when you're attacking a problem in science that you're reading every paper you can find and like you have an idea of how it's going to go and like you do have an inspirational moment but it's like at that fucking computer when you see the results like it's not like this big beautiful like the way they would do it in a movie is the way scientists or some scientists want you to think it would happen and it's just like that's not how things work.
I'm now just imagining like a 17th or 18th century Angela is like at Oxford, like that apple didn't fall on your head and you
That's
discovered
fucking
gravity.
bullshit.
That's bullshit.
Yeah. She's like, oh, an apple. Okay. But it is, though. It is. That's a true fact. Okay. ASMR facts about Isaac Newton.
Is it? Or are
It's
you? Are
it's
you
a fake apocryphal story. And
that
it's
makes sense.
nonsense. Yeah. Okay.
Is it even a story that he like? Is it like
I
part of a self
don't think
mythologizing or
so.
something?
I don't think so. I think it's like a cherry tree George Washington situation where it's
Okay,
kind of
okay.
just like.
That makes sense. But the thing is that like if you look at Tesla's like more like the other thing that we always kind of forget in this period is that like he needed to be educated. You have to work with the material in the society you work in, and he was powerless in the absence of like he basically like every scientist has to credit like their mentors, their education, the sort of socioeconomic trajectory that got them to the place they were. Like, if Watt, the big steam engine person, lived in like the Iron Age. Like, what chance would he have invented the steam engine, right? Like,
Right.
these people don't exist outside of contexts.
Well, speaking of thermodynamics, my favorite of the physics, the boom of capitalism tied with thermodynamics in like the 1850s, 60s, and 70s, and like the production of like giant factories and textile mills all powered by steam and this giant machinery is responsible for like the boom of physics in the late 1800s and then like the inspiration for quantum mechanics. All of that goes back to thermo and like you wouldn't have Tesla if you didn't have steam
Steam.
engine and like the money from capitalists being shoved in like, oh my gosh, we can make machines to make more money. Like give these
Mhm.
scientists money all of a sudden. It's like truly a product of the time of capitalists recognizing that science could make them money. And like it's you could draw like a straight line to like Einstein and
Yeah,
everything.
that makes a lot of sense. And then, in the later half of the 20th century, you've got the military industrial complex doing the same
Yeah.
thing, right? Like, how many, Like, for example, we're literally talking to each other via the internet, which was a DARPA project to maintain communication after a nuclear war, like on computers that were invented to be fire control mechanics for like World War II battleships. Like,
Yeah.
and so
So
like
capitalism's good. That's where we're at. It was worth it.
capitalism is capitalism, because I would also say that other methods of economics in the 20th century took, for example, I don't know of any, one example I could think of is a country that was barely industrialized at all to sending a satellite into orbit in like 30 years. That turns out that you know, it's just economics. It's just energy, right? It's just like you harness
Right.
more energy, that you can make more things happen. And that's both in physics, like that there is like a point where like that also applies to people, like the more energy that you can harness, I guess. I'm sounding like what's his name, Kardashev or whatever. Like the more energy you can harness, the more science you can do, because of just all of the things that means downstream, right?
Yeah. But
And
it's kind of true. Yeah.
and so like that's kind of, and now when we talk about the myth making, like Tesla did get a myth that was about this lonely suppressed genius that came after he died, not during his peak. And that is because like in the early 1900s, he maybe not didn't get a lot of individual credit for things, but that's because a lot of science and engineering was done at that time in these like corporate labs where the individual inventors weren't actually given a lot of recognition for the things they did. And then after Tesla kind of left, like wasn't able to keep doing stuff, he fell into financial precarity. And then as he fell into precarity, he started to make increasingly grand claims without any demonstrations, and eventually just became more and more obscure as he got older, and also mental health stuff started kind of creeping up on him. But then later got rebranded as the wronged visionary, and is like part of like our concept of like the mad scientist who figured out all this stuff. And so that's like where like the myth will fill in the gaps left by like, you know, media, institution, capitalism, that kind of stuff. And again, like it comes back to like, let's look at the death ray under a really great look at a really great metric for determining whether physics should be suspect, called conspiracy physics, where you refuse norms of evidence in peer review, or personalizing the disagreement as corruption or censorship. A very, very clever YouTuber made this benchmark, by the way. Treating lack of proof as lack of uptake as proof of suppression, overconfidence or vague grievances, making broad accusations, and no falsifiable predictions or reproducible demonstrations. Did I get that about right?
Yeah. It sounds well. I was thinking that this whole mythologizing of Tesla feels very like common, like just a thing that like people want science to be like this impossible thing that's like a magical spark of genius, and it's not like just some guy like I did this video about Richard Feynman. I was like, the thing that made Feynman a genius was that he just spent all his time reading and memorizing papers and then working the math out himself. And it's like people don't want to hear that because that's like hard work. You got to do that, and people would prefer instead alien inspiration or divine genius. Like it reminds me so much of Avi Loeb right now in this moment, just like destroying his reputation as like a professional Harvard astronomer and just chasing whatever claim, getting on boats and going to search for alien remnants. And people who see that and don't recognize it as mental illness. And I would say, I feel bad talking about Avi Loeb now because I feel like his family should step in and be like, you're obviously not well enough to have this public persona. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, it feels bad to watch it and watch the media make money off of him, a person in obvious mental decline. And it's the same thing with Nikola Tesla, where it's like you want his science to be genius, and then as his life kind of fades, you take his mental decline and use it to back up your conspiracy. It's so common that it shocks me that people fall for it, but it's depressing to see it replay again and again in real time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of fits like a mental archetype we have of like the genius inventor. Like you
Yeah.
could see all the way back to like, you know, the Greek philosophers and
Oh, like Daedalus and stuff. Just
yeah, and
like
like
he's this
Archimedes.
kooky guy.
Yeah. And just like a note on Avi Loeb, because we've talked about him a few times on this show, obviously, because we did an episode on Three Eye Atlas a little ways back where he tried it. He tried it again, but I think he's going to try it for like every extrasolar object we find now for the foreseeable
It's
future.
it like, I'm not even joking, like, it makes me feel bad for him, and I feel like if he had people in his life who loved him, they would like, it's like, I hope that he's doing this to make money and he doesn't believe it, but it doesn't seem like that to me. It seems like he's like, I don't know, it reminds me of, like, 2006 Britney Spears, where it's like, somebody needs to do something, like, this isn't fair to her, this isn't fair to the people making or it's the people making money off of this that are, like, disgusting, and I don't know, that's why I haven't made another video about him because I feel like I should make money off of talking about him because like it's just sad. But like it is important that scientists come out and talk like what you're doing, like to be like, no, here's why this is like a silly idea to follow. But I don't know. It's distressing to see it play out historically and then watch it again, I guess.
And this is kind of tangential, but this has been this always threw me for a loop because I made this mistake a few episodes ago multiple times because we have like in Canada we have like a kind of like left-wing political party that's like kind of like we've got three major political parties like conservative, liberal, NDP, which are kind of like they're kind of like if the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party was like its own party.
That sounds amazing. Is it amazing or?
It's they have their moments. Their predecessor is kind of the reason we have healthcare. So
nice.
And they kind of negotiated for us to get a little bit of a means-tested dental care program recently. But the last election, where everyone got scared of Trump, they lost like almost all their seats in parliament. And
because people were worried about the right-wing party getting it, so they
voted
shifted their votes
for Mark Carney. Yeah, but what that means is that the leader of the party resigned and they're having a new leadership race. And one of the front runners and somebody who I'm like volunteering for right now is awesome, but his name is Avi Lewis. And I get the names mixed up in my head way too often. And he's like running on like Mom Donnie shit. Like he's like, let's make a public grocery store chain. Let's make like, I think I just saw today that he's like, we're gonna make a public grocery store chain. We're gonna make like a public, we're gonna make 1 million public housing things, like all these things. And also, he is the husband of Naomi Klein.
No, that's amazing. Oh my God. I should move to Canada. Imagine First Lady Naomi Klein. I guess she wouldn't. Has there ever been a PM who's of this party?
No.
Okay.
They have always, their kind of thing is if you have more than two political parties, you can kind of do some stuff with like your leverage, like king.
Yeah.
So they've been able to do some, get their victories through that, or by making the moral argument loud enough that then they force the liberals to do it, and then the liberals take credit for it. That's a lot of their success. But the fact that if he wins, and it looks like he's getting like the most funding and he's getting the most like success, if he wins, it would be like a huge lurch to the left for the NDP, which would be a really cool deal. Because sounds
amazing. Also, wait, guys. To the audience, Naomi Klein has this book called Doppelganger about Naomi Wolf, who's like her doppelganger. So this guy, Avi Lewis, is his doppelganger now. Avi Loeb.
Avi Loeb is his Naomi Wolf.
The sequel to the doppelganger book is about Avi Loeb.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, perfect. It's a good book too.
Oh yeah, God, I love Naomi Klein. Naomi Klein should move to Canada or to move to America and be president. She lives in America?
She lived in America. She's Canadian. She moved to the United States, and then during Trump won, she moved back to Canada.
I'm so jelly.
Yeah, it would be pretty sweet. I'm getting like fundraising emails, like political fundraising emails from Naomi Klein. It's like one of the craziest like things to be a part of.
That sounds amazing. All I get are texts. They're like, Trump's making a long speech. We're going to match your $700 donation. And I can't. Guys, I'm now talking to your audience. Stop giving money to the Democrats. That's what I've done. I just can't handle it. They don't need my money. Don't do it. I'll vote, but I'm not giving them money. Okay, I'm sorry. I changed the topic. Go ahead.
No worries. Applying the Angela Collier conspiracy physics framework to Nikola Tesla for the later stuff. Tesla's successful work does fit like, real science, the AC motor, high frequency demonstrations do work. But then some of his stuff faced skepticism, underwent testing. Like he was criticized for these things. They didn't think it would work. But then they did testing and then it was replicated and it became standard. But his failed work, like wireless power and the death ray, edged towards like conspiracy physics. He made grand claims. He was vague on the mechanisms. It was never demonstrated. And then he blamed his lack of uptake on suppression. I think you mentioned that Avi Loeb's a good example. Physicists can also be conspiracy physicists.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a little bit about why people are doing this. But first, as we just did a big thing about capitalism, a little break for the products and services that make this show happen. But yeah, the thing is that Ancient Aliens has also made crap loads of money off of Tesla. They have made tons of episodes on him. And it's part of this sort of industrial scale of like making money off of his mythology. So Ancient Aliens has made hundreds of episodes. And for a little bit, I talked to a person, Dr. Cortland Pippert, who did a dissertation on the History Channel and had to watch over 1,500 hours of
Wow.
History Channel content to do this, and mentioned that like there wasn't like another myth itself is the idea that the History Channel used to be good before it became Ancient Aliens, and that it's always kind of been. But the thing is, it's not an ideological project. They literally were their concept was that they thought that white men were an underserved demographic when it came to cable news, and their plan was to make basically romance television for men.
Well, they nailed it, right?
Yeah. Their pitch to advertisers was if you can get white men to watch, you make money that no one else is making. And that, but it was just, again, it just happened to consistently produce the ideological content that turns out that, you know, white grievance politics and like the idea of people being suppressed is really, really resonates with people, or really resonates with white men for some reason.
It's not shocking.
Yeah.
That is what bothers me. It's just like you can't accept that Nikola Tesla was like a smart person who worked really hard with a large group of people to do amazing things. It always has to be like this lone super secret genius. No one would listen to him. And I'm smart because I'm listening. I'm smart because I'm looking at the real evidence. And it's just, you could really just read any book.
Yeah, it's insane. And like again, it fits it fits their idea, it fits like a sort of cultural thing. And then what happened is that this became an official policy because in 2003 they got in trouble for airing a show that accused LBJ of orchestrating the Kennedy assassination. In their defense, to kind of get out of this lawsuit, they said the History Channel does not say that any of these theories are correct. We are presenting a point of view. We enable our viewers to decide whether to agree or disagree with them and arrive at their own conclusions. And that sort of follows their formula. They prevent the conventional explanation, question if it's too simple, introduce an alien hypothesis, and then take that speculation as equally valid as the evidence of things that actually happened, and then never prove or disprove anything, and then say ancient astronaut theorists believe, and then just let the viewer decide.
It's rough.
That's almost the playbook that you put through.
Is your audience recovering History Channel viewers, or are they like the children forced to watch with their father at Thanksgiving and stuff? Do you know what I mean? Like
when we first started the show, we thought that this was going to be like a podcast that dads like, and we really thought that through. And then, but then we did a in-person meetup in Chicago and found that our audience are queer Zoomers. So
that tracks. I feel like that makes sense. Just like they're upset at their dad for watching 80 hours of alien tank shows.
Yeah. And so hopefully I can be like a more positive dad figure or something. I don't know. But yeah, then on top of that, you've got people like Giorgio Tsoukalos, who's like a big part of the History Channel. And he's like an entertainer, not a scholar in any way whatsoever. And just sort of became a meme and a brand, and he leans into the meme.
Oh, is that the hair guy?
That's the hair guy. We went to his live show and he was there, and he literally used the memes. Like they mentioned his hair 50 times during the thing.
Wow. That's a sad.
Yeah. And then, just he's a perfect vehicle though, because he's got name recognition. There were mysterious circumstances around his death because he died on his own. And then the government seizure, you can make a suppression appearance out of that. And he faced real marginalization that makes conspiracy feel plausible because he was marginalized for what we're going to talk about next, which is that he had a lot of neurodivergences and eccentricities that were then coded to be kind of alien-like. And so he gets used for things like the QAnon people claim that Tesla invented these med bed things, like these biohealing beds, like just a bed you can lie in and it'll cure all your diseases. And that like all these kinds of life force energy and any kind of crank science you want to attach to him, you can just Tesla can be associated with it because he got into a lot of things that cranks like to get into. He got into resonant frequencies and standing waves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that kind of fits it all. But yeah, the thing though is that's Tesla the myth. Tesla the person is a much sadder story because Now, this is a hard part because, like, this is something that we talk about endlessly in history. And I'll put this out here because you cannot definitively diagnose a dead person with a psychological condition. That is like one of the most, like, every working psychiatrist will say that you cannot diagnose anybody with anything unless a, qualified expert talks to you and tests you. So TikTok, chill out. But there is a lot of signs that that he probably had a lot of he probably was on the autism spectrum in some capacity. There's an autistic scientist named Temple Grandin, who was one of the first autistic people to document their insights that she gained from her experiences with it. And she was one of the people who cited Tesla as part of of having a lot of things. But this is all humanity's approach, not like a sort of scientific approach. But the problem, though, is that he also had some patterns that are associated with obsessive compulsive disorder, especially as he got older, because as he got older, these things started to really bog him down and are also a source of like where things started going wrong. Because like his mental health started declining. He started gaining a intense fear of germs and contamination. He refused to shake people's hands and wore gloves in public. He had obsessive hand washing rituals. He would like fold napkins a very specific amount of times. A lot of things, like I don't really want to really like dwell on these things, but he just like disliked asymmetry. And these are like survival mechanisms that are a fairly common, well-known survival mechanism for navigating overwhelming sensory things like that happen with obsessive thoughts. But when it comes to like autism stuff, like he had some sensory sensitivities, like he couldn't stand the sight of pearls and sent like his secretary home once for wearing pearl jewelry and was just uncomfortable with like certain types of textures and stuff like that, which is a very common thing with neurodivergence. Like as somebody who has ADHD myself and has for like my entire life, like you get weird things like that. Sensory processing works differently and it becomes a problem, or at least it could be a problem. And then in 1881 in Budapest, he had a quote complete nervous breakdown that nearly caused him to die. That was followed by so this is kind of part of his story, is that he had a complete nervous breakdown, but then a few months later is when he had the sort of revelation that led to the rotating magnetic field while he was recovering from this. Because when you're recovering from illness, you have a lot of time to just sit and think about stuff. And so he came up with like a big breakthrough for making that happen. And that got mythologized as like he went insane. And then that led to like the hypomanic inspiration thing.
Yeah.
When in reality, he was just burnt out. He was overworked and he didn't have support systems. And that, society just extracts value until he collapsed. So while he was producing profitable patents, he was valued, he was supported, he was funded, but then, they bought his patents, they paid royalties. He had JP Morgan funded one of his like wireless power projects, which they thought was going to be like a communications thing, like radio, but he thought it was going to be wireless power, so they shut it down. Especially because it just kept not really doing anything. And specifically, like they kept trying to, I'll just get through this. Like, so there's this place called Wardenclyffe where he got some JP Morgan funding and he was trying to do wireless power, which is a thing that is also, we're kind of getting to, but again, it's very difficult over any amount of distance. Like the closest we've gotten to now is like the thing you put your phone on.
It's a nonsense thing for anything more than that, I think, just because the heat that you would output attempting to get wireless power.
Yeah.
It would just like it would be an immense amount of energy that was wasted, and also infrared radiation hitting your physical body at all times. It just doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah, I've only ever heard of it being thought of in like really specific circumstances, like orbital solar or something like that. And again, that problem is what's causing those things to happen. I think there's like some with like radio and like microwaves, but again, hard to do and hasn't been figured out. But it is things people are working on. It's just, it's got some big hurdles. But JP Morgan thought that this was like a kind of communications thing, and he thought it was a wireless power thing. It didn't produce immediate returns because it wasn't working, but he kept getting money to do it. And then basically, like, and this is a thing I think that would come up in a lot of science and engineering as well. They're working on this like big, complicated thing. And then another breakthrough happens somewhere else that's like a much easier way of doing the same thing with much less technology. Like, I think that somebody was able to send a radio signal across the Atlantic with like a kite. And all of a sudden this like intensely like electrically heavy, complicated thing was no longer like useful. I thought that seems to happen a bunch too, and that kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
deflated the thing, and so they withdrew funding. But the narrative came that like he was on the verge of like discovering wireless power that could power everything in the world for free, and they couldn't put a meter on it, so the fossil fuel industry came and shut him
That's
down.
very silly.
And then, but like they withdrew funding, and but that hurt his reputation a lot. He became more isolated in 1917 because he didn't pay bills. His lab equipment was all repossessed, and was not able to get funding for any of his projects. So his last years, he couldn't afford rent. He fed pigeons and kind of lived alone. As soon as against the stuff, he wasn't generating profit anymore. Yeah, and I also think about the pigeons because the pigeons are also brought up as a thing of like him, like of his like mental illness. But in many ways, it's like the only reciprocal affection that he would get.
Yeah. Well, I'm having trouble scratching the obsessive cleanliness and also keeping birds because those don't seem to match in my brain.
He didn't keep birds; he just fed them.
Oh, like I just like it. I find birds really gross. I think that's my issue. But I mean, that does track as like a special interest, right? Just like
Yeah.
being super into birds.
Yeah. And that happens like, again, that's another like neurodivergent trait. So like there's like a lot of stuff in there, but like the main thing that we need to do, and in his case, is that we kind of need to get away from what like disability justice framework or disability justice like scholars would look into, is like this idea of like the inspiration, what they call inspiration porn for like disabled people for non-disabled motivation, productivity as like a prerequisite for personhood, and that these like exceptional people are used to hold up and inspire other people. And this happens a lot when it comes to not only Tesla but people on the autism spectrum in general. Like this is a thing that Elon Musk does for himself as well as part of his self-mythology, usually as an excuse for doing things like the Hitler salute at the presidential inauguration, which is insane that happened, and we just live in the world where that happened. But in reality, like autism spectrum disorder is, you know, like I as someone who has ADHD, like I appreciate the reframing around neurodivergence, but like it also in the world that we live in causes a lot of friction, and it can cause a lot of like it's not fun to have these conditions in the world we live in. The whole point of disability justice is to remake the world so that these people, that you know, people with these conditions don't have to live in like the sort of cutout world that only sees you as valuable for how productive you are.
I don't know how to say this, but like I think it also does a disservice by like I feel like the world promotes science as like this like safe place, as if oh all the scientists have some sort of neurodivergence, so you should go there and you'll fit right in. When like that's just demonstrably not true. Like all of the most successful scientists, I hope I don't hurt anyone's feelings. They're like super good at talking to people. They're super like physically attractive. They're really like funny and affable because that's the type of skills you need to get funding. Like science is a collaborative effort where you work with a lot of people. And so there are definitely like these examples of people who like locked themselves in their office and worked alone and they were like a super genius. But the vast majority of science just isn't like that. And I feel like it could be upsetting for someone to like hear this about Tesla and then be like, oh, I'll be safe in this environment. And it's like, nope, no, you like it should be. We should be making accommodations for people to be successful and helping them be successful. Like I don't think being an affable, attractive person should be a prerequisite for like doing science. But like this mythos, I feel like really creates like this discongruity with what actually happens in science, because like scientist as a job is like all the other jobs. I don't know if that makes sense.
No,
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. As I've been adjacent to academia for many years and in it for a little bit, but yeah, the people who do well are the ones who know how to get grant money. They know how to be good, like because like a lot of times, a lot of scientific breakthroughs are done with like massive labs. So the successful scientists are the ones who are like good managers of people and good like managing personalities, because you have like, you know, 20, 30 grad students who are helping you work on this project. And like, so it's like, again, it's like every other field. It's work, it's meticulous, and it's about working with people because it's a collaborative project. But yeah, like one of my friends, she works with like people who are on the autism spectrum, like as a support, like she's like a support, like a researcher. And it like when we think of like a lot of times now when we think of like people on the autism spectrum, we're thinking of like when we talk about like Elon Musk and stuff, that we're talking about people who are on the like lower, like the higher functioning of the condition, and that we kind of are erasing like the fact that like there are people with autism where like it causes like very high levels of support needs. Some people are like nonverbal. They have like there's a spectrum. It's called a spectrum for a reason, and that those people kind of get walked away, like kind of like erased from the story. And on top of that, like the autistic unemployment rate is like 40%. For people with higher support needs, it's as high as like 85%. Which, yeah, it's like it's not like this like productivity superpower. It is a condition that can be very hard. Like you need a lot of support and you need a lot of accommodation to get by. I am someone with ADHD, and like I've gotten to the point, like for example, now I learned that I cannot function in an office environment, even if like it would result in me making more money, having a much more stable like lifestyle or anything like that. I just can't do it. I am hilariously bad at like things that most people find very easy to do. And the whole idea of like disability justice and like that kind of getting around that is that I should be able to create a life where I can do what I do well at its best thing, which is not going on Teams meetings and answering lots of emails. Because I would forget everything all the time.
Well, like if you look at Tesla himself too, like this mythologizing of who he was as as if he is like this super hyper genius whose like sole focus is to make technology. Like you're erasing this part of his life where he was failed by society and he was alone in a hotel room for like 40 years. Like that's a devastating story. And to have it like twisted into conspiracy theory is, I don't think, helpful to like this goal, or what our like society's goal should be, is to like support people to live a full life no matter what their needs are, you know. Yeah, I didn't know that people were like diagnosing Tesla. I guess that's probably a thing people do.
We try yeah. In history, it's good to like there was an attempt at doing like psychological history at points, but it really is just like it's not. It's one of those things where it's like we wouldn't be able to formally say it. There's just enough evidence that like it might be leaning that way, but we would definitely nobody would be able to confidently say like he definitely had this condition or that condition. He just has a lot of symptoms that we like back then were just considered eccentricities or him being odd or mad or something like that. But today we would see like, oh, these are symptoms of like these specific conditions. But I like it's a difficult, yeah. What it is, that area is a very difficult and complicated thing because like some people tried to do it and it didn't go very well. But you take that story of that very sad story of someone who was failed by society and like had obviously so much to contribute to the world and actually had a lot taken away. Then you move to the fact that his name is now in the form of Tesla Incorporated, a $1.4 trillion market cap car company, headed by a person who on May 8th, 2021, was the host of Saturday Night Live and said that he had Asperger's syndrome and framed it as the reason that he was awkward and had controversial jokes. And that's just how his brain works, which got pushed back because disability advocates would say, one, don't use the term Asperger's. That is not a term that's from the fucking Nazi period. Autism spectrum disorder. Yeah. Asperger, like the professor, the person who coined the term was like a Nazi scientist.
I know people didn't say it, but I didn't know why.
Well, I mean, it was still used, but then the DSM-5, which is like the DSM is like the big collection of like how they diagnose psychological conditions. They basically moved it from like a lot of things. They moved it from like if you have Asperger's, then you're like, you have all these things. If you have autism, it's like this. And they're like, no, it's autism spectrum disorder. Like there's like a whole, there's too many gray areas between those categories, basically. But it didn't help that Hans Asperger also was like, yeah, they were trying to find a way to like harness autism for the military and stuff like that.
Yikes.
It was brutal. The more you learn about the Nazis, the more they suck.
Well, don't leave the Elon Musk tangent without mentioning that he like enacted Doge, which like murdered millions of people by cutting off US aid to the like a mass murderer on the scale that like we haven't seen. Like I feel like people like, because he's such a dumbass, like he's such a loser, like he's so pathetic that people like excuse his behavior, which like he is also trying to do by like claiming that like neurodivergence makes him be a Nazi who produces child porn. But like I just feel like, I don't know, making fun of him is so fine, but like also like that's not enough.
He's one of like history's greatest monsters at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the like odd things of this period is like the most evil people who are doing like unimaginable amounts of damage to the world are also so weird and easy to make fun
Like,
of.
they're
And
just fucking losers. Like,
yeah,
like, be cool. I can't. I
yeah.
can't handle it.
So like yeah, like let's maybe not conflate being a Nazi with being autistic because there's
Yeah.
lots of autistic people, I would argue the vast majority who are not Nazis. And also yeah, that stigma also like that in itself builds a stigma against people who have that, especially like women, trans people, people of color, non-speaking people with autism who have higher support needs because like for example like autism spectrum disorders like higher like there's a higher representation amongst trans women and it's like that's
Huh.
I don't know exactly why but like those are the people are like that's why you don't like wrap this up in like autism isn't you have to like kind of get rid of this idea of like autism being like a quirky genius superpower or an excuse to be evil or some kind of like you know elite male thing and it's actually like a much more diverse and much more complicated thing than that and so
Yeah.
let's kill that. um do you feel good about all of this? This is where
I guess like this is the kind of portrayal of a mad scientist that like is so like not helpful. Like it's not true that lone geniuses exist, but also like I don't know. I am like it's so upsetting to take this man's like real actual suffering and like make it a government conspiracy. Like it does make me really sad. Like it should be a sad story about the failure of how we like as a society can work with people and to like help them live full lives and the autism community.
yeah.
I just I want them to have social services. I want them to live fulfilling lives. I don't expect them to be like doing stuff for us. I want them to be happy. Instead, it's just like aliens are real. That's upsetting. This is a sad episode.
I'm sorry. I should bring. I know that Planet Nine was a little bit more fun. But I guess like the big thing too, like to look at to kind of like zoom out because I know that we're like kind of getting low on time here. Is like what like a lot of the systems that caused Tesla to have like this really hard second half of his life makes me think about like what kind of brilliance are we discarding now like in 2026 like because they don't fit some kind of monetization model like what innovations are we erasing because we can't you know control it or like we don't or it just doesn't fit in the way that we see profit and stuff like that and so how do we support people not as like resources but like as
I mean,
people.
it's so hard to pretend to have this conversation. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sitting in America and they've just closed the NSF and the Department of Education, and like every single wonderful, beautiful immigrant scholar that was gonna come here, and like the American university was an institution and it's just gone now. Like, our whole structure of doing science in this country is over. I don't think people realize it yet, but like you can't cancel a 12-year longitudinal study in year 7 and then pick it back up when a Democrat gets elected. Like, science in America is over. I don't know. I guess one way we could support people is by letting children go to school and not like having secret police that kidnap their parents on every street corner. That would be great. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like it's like this conversation 5 years ago could have been like, oh, an interesting way that like, because like if you do think of Tesla, if we as a society had like some sort of like universal basic income that could allow him to like have a steady home life, like because like he's getting kicked out of these hotels every year and he's carrying his boxes of papers and hoping his pigeons fly to the new window. Like if we had some sort of universal basic income that would allow him to like not worry about how he's going to feed or house himself and just worry on like how he can like go about his day to day, like, and maybe that's not going to a lab every day, but maybe he could come around to it. Like he would have had 40 more years of work like that he was excited about, that we as a like society could benefit from, which is sounds bad, like we're benefiting from his labor, but like if he wants to be a scientist, that's great and we should let him do that, and then as a result it makes society better. But now, right now in this moment, it's just like I mean, they the all the trans people aren't allowed to drive in Kansas. Like, what are we
that just
doing
happened
here?
today, didn't it?
Today, which is just full on Nazi shit for anyone who's still like, whoa, 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 you can't call everything not. That's full on Nazi shit. I'm sorry. Like, I don't have an answer. Like, 5 years ago, we could have had a conversation about, like, oh, what does education look like? Interesting. But, like, it doesn't exist anymore. At least for me. How's Canada? It's better, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have always gotten a lot of national pride over being just having a slightly higher standard of living than the U.S. And so
Oh,
our education's kind of going through the ringer right now too, but for different reasons and definitely less extreme. But we do still have education, so there is that. I'll take that. I'll count my blessings there. There wasn't a thing where we were going to try to attempt to yoink as much of that talent as we can.
oh yeah.
So there's like our entire immigration system changed in the last year, and one of the things it's trying to do is just to get as many. One of the pathways is like to get as many Canadians who move to America to become like scientists and engineers and stuff like that to move back to Canada now and easily do so.
China did something similar to that, or they have been, where they're just like, oh, you started a lab at some small town university in like Tulsa. Here's millions of dollars to come back to some random small town in China. And it worked really well. Like they got a bunch of people to go back.
At this point, like, we mentioned how things are really dark. And honestly, like in times where things are really dark, you also like one of the things that gets you through it is like, radical imagination. Like you have to kind of keep in mind that things actually can get better. And that is that it's hard to do, but it's kind of like an essential thing to hang on to, or else you just kind of will give up. And so like, yeah, maybe someday that there could be a way where somebody could pursue research, not need a patron to tell them to do it, could be who they are, not be exploited, not be abandoned, could fail and not be disregarded, and also like wouldn't be isolated and could live their life and die with dignity, which is something that I wish that Nikola Tesla had.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
But that's not a world that aliens are going to make for us. That's a world that we're going to have to make for ourselves. And it's like all science, it's going to be meticulous, incremental, and extremely hard work. So get to work. Angela, though, please tell the internet where they can find you have so many good videos. I can't even like start being like because like all my favorites are like in the Angela classics. Like I know that you want to get more of the new ones out, but like I think of like Harvard, MIT, and like classic.
Okay, I will recommend a more recent video that I think your audience would like that I did about Dyson spheres. A Dyson sphere is an idea where you take mass from the planet Jupiter and make hundreds of millions of tiny, basically solar panels, and then power your society with the entire energy output of your star. And I made a video about how silly it was. So you might like that. I read a science paper out loud. So you might like that.
That's a good one. Yeah. Cause like, I remember that like the SETI people are kind of trying to look for them and shows that maybe they shouldn't.
Okay. I do talk about one of the papers in the video where they're like, oh, here's it's a fun video. I won't spoil it. I will say the big critique I got on that video was that Angela just kept saying it was a really dumb idea, and she didn't explain why it was a dumb idea. But the idea is that you take the planet Jupiter, you convert the gaseous mass into materials that you can use to build millions of satellites, and you put them so far out in orbit, and then somehow you don't cook your planet and you use every single piece of energy. And they were like, you didn't explain why that was stupid. Just like blowing up the planet Jupiter to build satellites is the inherently silly part of that idea.
Yeah. Even just the idea of harnessing that much energy, yeah, would just like it would turn the planet into slag.
What are we doing? What do we do? Why? I don't know, but I'm not an innovator like Elon Musk, so it's probably my issue.
But yeah, I will wholeheartedly say that Angela Collier's YouTube channel is very good, and everybody should be watching it. It's very fun. It is. I've had a very good time, and you're gonna go places.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Sorry, I'll try to make sure the next time you come in, if you haven't been completely scared off by this one, that it'll be a happier subject or a more fun one. But yeah, as far as everything for the end of the show goes, Probs Not Aliens on Blue Sky. Step back. I'm gonna have videos out I should have a video out theoretically tomorrow, but there's a lot of time in Premiere between now and then, so we'll see what happens.
Oh wait, like for your channel? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm
Yeah.
interrupting you. You're logging off
No,
the podcast.
it's all good.
That's
Yeah,
exciting. You haven't
yeah.
had one in a while.
15 months. It's driving me crazy.
Wow.
NerdSync, because Scott has a new bebe and could use your so watch his awesome videos about, you know, art and comics and creativity, and he's a gem. For this show, the best ways you can support the show is either by signing up for Nebula at nebula.tv/probably-not-aliens. If you watch Angela Collier on there too after you sign up, then you're helping support Angela's work too. And then patreon.com/probs-not-aliens is our like fund for, you know, our editors. And if you don't have the money, because, you know, gestures widely, reviews or, you know, telling your friends about the show is a really great way to help out. So you can send them though to probs-not-aliens.com. So yeah, till then, I'm Tristan Johnson, and you.
I'm Angela Collier.
And the truth is out there. Probably. All right.